Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. We today have Professor T.V. Ramachandra from Indian Institute of Science giving us a talk on remote sensing of urban dynamics in India. This is the Bhoo-Mandal talk series. We are assuming after a break of 2 months, and we are very grateful for Professor TV Ramchandra to accept our invitation and be here to enlighten all of you um, about ecological uh, uh, implications of unplanned uh, urbanization, right? So today's talk is on remote sensing of urban dynamics, and Dr. T.V. Ramchandra is a very well-known ecologist amongst from India. He is an FIEE, UK, FNIE, and he has obtained his PhD in ecology and energy from Indian Institute of Science again. He is at present the coordinator of Energy and Wetland Research Group, EWRG, convener of Environmental Information Systems at the Center for Ecological Sciences. Uh, During the past 2 decades, he has established an active school of research in the area of energy and environment. So he is the authority in this area here. Um, he is a member of Karnataka State Wetland Authority, Karnataka State Audit Advisory Committee. He was also a member of the Karnataka State Level Environment Expert Appraisal Committee, which is appointed by the Ministry of Environment and Forests, Government of India. He is a member of the Western Ghats Task Force, appointed by the Government of Karnataka. Uh, TVR, as he's warmly called. He is also serving in several committees of the National Green Tribunal related to the wetlands of Bangalore. He has received several awards. It's a long list, so I will just say the main ones. So he's gotten the Johnny Biosphere Award for Ecology and Environment, Satish Dhawan Young Scientist Award in 2007 by the Karnataka state government. And very recently, he has been recognized as a research advisor at the Nanyang Academy of Sciences, Singapore, and an eminent engineer in the Institution of Engineers in Karnataka. And these are prestigious recognitions that professor has gotten under his belt. Right? TVR also features in the top 2% of top scientists in the recent global ranking of scientists. He is also recognized as an elected fellow of the Institution of Engineers, i.e., India, National Institute of Energy, Indian Association of Hydrologists, and several others. Um, let's talk a little bit about his research interests, for which he is a giant in India right now. So his research interests are in the area of aquatic ecosystems, biodiversity, ecological modeling, Western Ghats ecology, energy systems, renewable energy, energy conservation, planning, geoinformatics, environmental engineering research. And TVR has also very kindly spread the knowledge around. He has run lots of seminars and taught a lot of courses, advised several students. He's indeed, it's indeed a great opportunity for us to learn from him today. In today's talk, once again, he's going to talk about remote sensing of urban dynamics, and where he's going to talk about unplanned urbanization and the kind of ecological implications we have had due to rapid urbanization and industrialization. On behalf of IEEE GRS's Bangalore section, we are very happy to have you here, sir, and the stage is yours. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me for the prestigious Bhoo-Mandal talk of IEEE. That today I have an opportunity to talk to the fellow, the IEEE fraternity. I'll be talking about how to use these spatial technologies for effective planning in the countries like ours. I work in Western Ghats. So before I bring you to the Bangalore, let me also start my journey with the Western Ghats. The what kind of work we do there. Probably for 1 or 2 minutes I'll talk about it. Then I will talk about spatial data. I have designed my talk like this. First I will talk about sustainable development. Then how this geospatial data helps in appropriate planning. Then we'll discuss the urban dynamics. Then some of the case studies what we have done in India, in about 10 cities in India. I will share some of the results. Then what will happen if we continue to have the urbanization, that to unplanned urbanization, I will highlight that. Then at the concluding part of my talk, I will talk about research at IISc and also more importantly, society relevant science. These are in the lines of IEEE, the advancing technology for society or humanity. How we have reached the population. I will try to share our contribution to the society. So now when we talk about the natural resources management, one needs to do the planning. For doing the planning, we require the data. That today we have the data which is acquired remotely through the satellite platform at a regular interval of 1 day or 7 days or 21 days or 30 days. The satellite data are available from 1970 onwards. That means for the last 50 years, we have the data available at regular interval. So that data, we analyze it using geoinformatics. We use GIS, Geographic Information System. And of course, some of my students also write the program to analyze the patterns of the spatial and temporal patterns in the remote sensing data. Our final objective is to develop the decision support system, which helps in the planning. So now you all know that when we do the planning, we will have clean air, water, and environment to all, more importantly to our children. That can happen only when we sustain the natural resources. When we have the sustenance of natural resources, we'll have security, survival, and peace. You will see wherever there is a scarcity of resources, there are conflicts. Where our surplus resources are well-managed resources are there, you see the people are by and large happy. So that development is called sustainable development. That means the development that ensures the clean air, water, and environment to all of us. So now let me give a glimpse of the things when we don't manage properly, what is going to happen. This is during my lifetime. When I was a student, I was traveling in a region in Western Ghats. I used to see the water. Probably it was because of the greenery in the surrounding. But today, I don't see the water in the same month, same day, but I don't have the water, probably because of the deforestation in the region. So this is the kind of the linkages we analyze. And of course, we try to communicate to the wider sections of society and also to the scientific, the fraternity also. So now let us try to understand from the nature. When you look at the nature, we can learn anything. If my name is known in the system, I would say that is because whatever I learn from the nature, when I interact with the nature, when I bring it to the lab, my students convert it to a technology. So that's where we have become quite successful in the system. Now today, if you look at the slide, what I have put here is a simple food chain. Here you see the food is being manufactured by the plants, the synthesizing solar energy, which is eaten by the next level of organism. And then whatever is left in the system is being converted into elemental form by bacteria and fungi. That means already naturally there is a circular economy. And also those who teach the principles of thermodynamics, you appreciate that here in this slide, you can see the material and energy transfer happens. And at every level, when the synthesis happens, there's a loss of energy. You can also learn law of entropy. So that means the nature is the best teacher. If we learn from nature, we'll never do the mistake in our life. Now, let me take you to the Western Ghats. This is the kind of environment I work. I travel from Kerala to Gujarat. That is my home, the entire Western Ghats. It extends about 1,600 kilometers. And one of the things you need to understand is the Western Ghats has 100 plus rivers. Because of the water provided by this river, we have the food security in the peninsular India. So now, if you want to ensure the water and food security, you need to make sure the ecosystem in the Western Ghats are conserved or protected. Now, how much area is the Western Ghats in India? If you look at the spatial extent, it constitutes only 5% of the India's geographical area. In that 5%, we have identified only 2% of areas as ecologically sensitive. So if you conserve that 2% of the 5%, that means you can the you can have the water, you can grow the food. So and also it's a home for diverse plants and animals. So I know that I'm talking to the engineers today. I'm also an engineer, but at the same time, because of my training in ecology, I can also talk about the biology aspects also. Now, when you look at the Western Ghats, see, there is a spatial pattern on the occurrence of the species of plants and animals. As you travel from Kerala to Gujarat, the latitude extends from 8 degree to 22-degree latitude. And if you look at the number of species that occur, you see that at 8 to 14-degree latitude, you have the highest number of species. That means when I say highest number of species, you have diversity of life. Because of the diversity, we have diverse food and diverse medicine. So if we want diverse food and diverse medicine, we need to protect the Western Ghats. Now, you all know that COVID-19, most of us have spent indoors because of the COVID-19. See, one microorganism has made us to be inside. So this happens when we mismanage the natural resources or the forest. Now, if you want to understand further regarding the ecosystem, if you come to the Western Ghats, you hardly see the COVID-19 instances. Only when people from Mumbai or Bangalore visit Western Ghats, probably they will take the COVID-19 virus to that region. Otherwise, you see by and large people are healthy and happy. Another study which has brought out is the negative correlation between the ecosystem services to the COVID-19. You know, where the ecosystem services are very good, where the forests are very good, and water bodies are healthy, you see less instances of COVID-19. So is the case of the carbon footprint. You see the higher the carbon footprint, you see the more and more of the COVID instances. That is the recently the publication that has come out in the leading journal highlight this thing. That means we need to learn to manage the natural resources. So now when you look at the nature, nature is always in balance as long as the two-legged animals do not get into the picture. Now when you look at the nature, energy and material transition happens, optimization happens, and also nature does the treatment. That is what we all use the technology to have the bioremediation aspect. I will talk about that at the end of my talk. And we need to maintain the sustainability. For that, you need to manage the natural resources. For managing natural resources, you need to do the planning. So now if you don't do it, what are the consequences? Let us try to understand. So for example, if you look at the ecological disaster in the Easter Island, people thought that land is available. They went on expanding the island. But unfortunately, the island didn't survive because there was a scarcity of water. The similar thing happened in our country in the last leg of the Vijayanagara kingdom. If you look at the history book, we see that last leg of the Vijayanagara kingdom failed because of the water scarcity. That means if we mismanage the natural resources, we are going to pay the heavy price. So now if you do not want to manage if you want to manage the natural resources, the added advantage is it also gives you the holistic health. You know, harmonious state of health, mind and the body is a holistic health. The absence of the disease doesn't indicate the healthiness of the individual. One needs to be healthy in the mind and also in the spirit. So now these are my areas of research. My student work on these diverse areas. Those who are interested can visit my website. Now I will come to the today's topic, the spatial data. As I said earlier, remote sensing data, these are the data acquired remotely through the Spaceborne platform. So, or even the airborne platform. And this data is available at very regular interval, which helps in analyzing the extent and the health of the natural resources. And because of this large data available, there's a challenge also. We have the challenges in data mining, data analysis, understand the patterns in the data. And once we do that, we can develop the decision support system that will help in planning the resources. Of course, once we do the planning, it can be effective only if we have the regulatory mechanism in a proper shape. But unfortunately, in our country, the pollution control boards are there, but hardly they work. That is where we see the failing health of the air or the water in the cities and in most part of the country. So now let us try to understand remote sensing. This gives a picture of the taken from the satellite platform wherein you can map the water bodies, etc. And it has a diverse application. One can use the remote sensing data to analyze land use, land cover change, the changes in climate, the biodiversity studies, watershed mapping, urban growth, landscape modeling. You can also understand the pattern analysis, the spatial pattern analysis, then the feature extraction. You can extract and do the, for example, if you are interested in building, you can extract those features from the remote sensing data. Now, how does this remote sensing work? Let us try to understand. See, when we go out, we all see the various features because our eyes can identify the various features. So that is because the solar energy that is incident on the object reflects the energy in the visible band. Visible band consists of the wavelength blue, green, and red. For example, if you take vegetation, the green leaf, when the solar energy is incident on the green leaf, the energy in the blue and red band is observed while the energy in the green band gets reflected. Because of this reflected energy in the green wavelength, our eye perceives the vegetation as green. Now, when you look at the various earth features like vegetation, the soil, or the water, they have a different reflectance pattern. Because of this, you can identify or map the various earth resources like water or the soil or the vegetation. Now, when you look at this, you see that visible band, the green, the band, you see the reflectance is higher for the vegetation and picks up in the infrared region. That means the infrared region data is also useful in mapping the resources, and also you can find out the type of the vegetation. For example, you can map the mango vegetation from the tamarind or the teak plantations, etc. Similarly, you can do the moisture analysis or the water in the this one because we have the water absorption happening in this the wavelength 1.4, 1.9, 2.4, etc. So that means using this reflected energy, we can do the analysis. This is called passive remote sensing. Those who use the radar data, that is active remote sensing, where the source of energy the is incident on the object and whatever the reflected you capture and analyze. Okay. Now, when you look at how it behaves, for example, how do you map the vegetation which has some damage, the other stress attack versus the one healthy vegetation? Because in the infrared region, you see that the reflectance for the healthy vegetation much higher than the damaged one or the stress vegetation. Because of that, you can map the vegetation which are under stress versus the healthy vegetation. Way back in 80s, when the sugarcane plantations had the disease, that is how IISc intervened to help the state administration to find out what is the scale of the damage that has happened and how to rehabilitate farmers. At the same time, what kind of remedial measure one can have to prevent the propagation of the disease. That means even in the health sector, one can contribute using the remote sensing. Now, when you look at this data, I said it is just a reflected energy or the emitted energy. Depending on the radiometric resolution of the sensor, you have the numbers associated with the data. See, when you look at the picture is a collection of grid or a picture element or a pixel. The each pixel element will have the reflected energy stored in that. That depends on the amount of energy that is reflected from the earth resources. So that is what is stored. For a vegetation, you have a certain number, the certain range of numbers, while for the soil it has a thing. Because of that, you can map the various earth resources. Now, suppose if you are using 8-bit sensor, your digital number or the spectral signature ranges from 0 to 255 or 2 to the power of 8, which is 256 colors. That means you can have the digital number ranging from 0 to 255. Only your job is to do the statistical analysis to find out what the number corresponds to vegetation on the ground or the soil or the open areas, etc. Now, there are various data available in the result, but what you get from the remote sensing data is the latest data. You can keep updating that as and when the remote sensing the satellite passes through the particular region. You have the Survey of India topo sheet, once in the 10 or 15 years it is updated, whereas the remote sensing data is available at regular interval, and you have varied spatial resolution, 1 meter to 30 meter to 250 to 1 kilometer. One pixel has the information corresponding to 1 meter by 1 meter on the ground. That way you can make out the river course or the vegetation, the type of vegetation, etc. So the Landsat data is about 30 meters. Then to do the classification, we also have the supervised the algorithms we use. That means we collect the training data and use that data to train our remote sensing data to find out the patterns in the image. So that's where we collect the data from the field using the GPS. GPS we do the pre-calibration and use that for the collecting the field data. Then also you have the virtual portals wherein the data is available. For example, Google Earth and Bhuvan data are available, which helps in finding out what is there where you can visually find out, suppose if you want to analyze the vegetation, you can map the regions where vegetations are there, use it as a training data, and can classify this Landsat or the boundaries data. Now, these are the kinds of data that is available today. You see that from 1970 onwards, the varied spatial resolution and varied temporal resolution. Temporal resolution means how often you get the data. That means from 1972 onwards, every 16 or to 18 days you get this data. So that is the various reason the data is available. The various spatial resolution, depending on your application requirement, you can use the data. For example, if you want to extract the features of buildings in Bangalore, probably you need to go for a better spatial resolution data. Cartosat data or IRS P6 data, which is 5.6 meter resolution, will help in that. Okay. So now this is the varied spatial resolution data. You can see 1 meter data, then 4 meter resolution data. This is a 25 meter and 250 meter. This is for the regional level. You can use this data, but at the cadastral level or the village level or the city level, one can go in for this better spatial resolution data. So then, so now to summarize what I said, remote sensing data gives us the spatio-temporal data. That means it gives the spatial data on temporal scale. For the last 50 years, we get the data. To analyze the data, we use the GIS, and of course, GPS helps in the navigation. So now to summarize, GIS helps in spatial and temporal analysis, where the GPS or the global positioning system helps in the field data collection or the training data collection, and the remote sensing data it provides you the spatial and temporal data. The by and large, we call these as spatial and temporal tools or the data used for the spatial and temporal analysis. Now, if you want this data, the cost is not a limiting factor. Your ability to analyze the data is the limiting factor. If you have the talent, now the data is available. So now these are the various sources you can get the data. Landsat data is available at the public domain. So you can get it from these archives or the portal. Similarly, Bhuvan gives you the data where you have the WMS and WFS facility where you can view the maps. You can also extract the features, etc. Dr. Divakar spoke about it in one of the earlier talks of the Bhoo-Mandal series. Then, of course, you have the spot, GeoI, and Modi's data. This is one day data. The course resolution data also you can use or download. Now, to analyze the data, if you want to be cost effective, I would say that you should use your brain effectively or optimally. So that is where I would suggest you to switch over to the open source or the free and open source software. So now in our IISc website, we have archived all this the software. This is done by one of my students, Dr. Uttam Kumar. Currently is a faculty in IIIT, the colleague of Dr. Jaya. So these are the various data, the software that is available. If you want to develop the content management system, you have the Drupal, Joomla, and such softwares are available. And if you want to do the GIS analysis at no cost, you have QGIS. If you want the remote sensing data analysis for the raster data analysis, you have GRASS. And of course, you have the statistical software, or you don't even have to go for the commercial software, other things. So in fact, I've been running the GIS lab at IISc at zero cost. So none of my students use the commercial software. We use the free and open source software, and we also have the mirror portal for the graphs in at our website. So these are the glimpses of some of the software that is available, which you can download and you can use for the spatio-temporal analysis. Now, let us try to understand the urbanization, the theme of today's talk. See, when we talk about urbanization, yes, urbanization is required because it provides you the basic amenities and infrastructure. For that, one needs to do the planning. There is another kind of urbanization which is called unplanned. The most part of the country, unplanned urbanization is happening. That is where, in some of the pockets, you do not see the people having the appropriate infrastructure nor the basic amenities. And air quality is also poor, inefficient energy devices. Ultimately, the people pay the price. These outskirts, the growth that is happening, the dispersed growth, we call that as a urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is the dispersed growth. Now, for example, if you connect two cities by a road, you will see some facilities coming up on the somewhere on the middle of the road. Some chai shops will come, or some eventually that becomes the town. Chai shop and then service centers will come. That you would have noticed from Bangalore to Mysore highway or any highway. Then if you visualize that, you can predict what is likely to happen 20 years down the line or 10 years down the line. That means that if a planner gets such kind of the geo-visualization of a likely growth, he or she can provide the basic amenities and infrastructure. So that is how the remote sensing data helps in the doing the planning, so that providing the basic amenities and infrastructure to all citizens in the region. Even if you want to defend our the borders, then the remote sensing data has been useful. And one of my students who was a major in the army, he came to IISc to do his master's course. He learned the remote sensing, the GIS, and today he has been successfully deploying those technologies in the defense sector. So now, if you do not do the planning, what are the likely consequences? Let us try to understand. As I said earlier, we'll have the loss of vegetation and open spaces, lack of safe and efficient transportation. Urban sprawl happens with the loss of ecology and biodiversity in the outskirts, enhanced carbon footprint, urban heat island effect, the flooding, the health, respiratory, kidney failure, the cancer, etc. And this all happens because of the fragmented governance and corruption. See, when we do not use the data, it helps the corrupt officials to make money. That is where use of data can also tone down the corruption or the inefficiency in the system. When there's an inefficiency in the system, what we see is that young lady of about between the age group of 20 to 30 has to struggle to earn 20 or 30 rupees a day. These are the kinds of the things that affect the livelihood of the people. And of course, we all have faced the flooding happening in the region, and frequent rainfall in the region is all signs of the poor planning in the region. Now, as I said earlier, remote sensing data helps in understanding the spatial patterns in the data. On temporal scale, it gives the spatio-temporal pattern. Using that data for the last 50 years, you can predict what is likely to happen the 10 years or 5 years from now. So we take into account the behavior of the agents. That's what we have used the agent-based modeling technique. So what we normally do is we acquire the data, remote sensing data, along with the other data for like survey of India, topo sheet, etc. Then we do the pre-processing of the data, which involves the geometric corrections and other the preliminary steps. Then we analyze the pattern. Normally we you do the supervised classification. That means we go to the field, collect the data with the knowledge of the training data. We train the images so that we get the better accuracy. So then once we have the data analyzed, we also do the validation, the accuracy assessment, the kappa statistics we compute, and to do the modeling, we use both agent-based or the non-agent-based like cellular automata. And once we understand the behavior of the agent, one can go in for the agent-based this one like HPCA, Marco, etc. So now let us try to understand the modeling approach. What we have done is we understand the behavior of the agent and its contribution in development through the fuzzy and analytical hierarchical process. Then HP was used to rank each agent or parameter. The agents could be the road network, the industry coming up, or the buildings and you will find out what is the which one has the higher weightage compared to the among the all the variables you have considered. Output of AHP with constraints were used in multi-criteria evaluation to derive the transition map, which aids the input to the CMR code. That is how the standard the modeling protocol we have used. Now, as I said earlier, you have the planned and unplanned urbanization. If you understand the unplanned urbanization, understand the causal factor, you can also improve the situation. There are various aspects which we have done in Bangalore, like the innovative approaches that I will talk about it in the concluding part of my talk. Now, to understand Bangalore as a case study, as you all know, Bangalore became a Bengaluru in 2006. The area of Bangalore today is 740 square kilometer. In this 740 square kilometer, way back in 1800, we had 1452 water bodies which are interconnected. Because of interconnectivity, the water used to move from one region to the other. Because of that, there was a treatment was happening because of the phenomena of bioremediation. And we had 80% vegetation cover in the Bangalore. And the advantage of that is the temperature in the Bangalore during that period in 1800 during the May month was 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. And today, if you look at the temperature, we have gone up to 34 to 37 degrees Celsius. In fact, from the last 2 3 days, you are seeing the increase in temperature already in the January month. The day yesterday it was 27 degrees, and today it is 29 degrees Celsius. So that's how the temperature is increasing in the region, which is directly proportional to the amount of the mismanagement that has happened on the green cover or the open spaces and the water bodies in the region. Now, when you look at the 1800, the Bangalore also enjoyed the 0 degree Celsius temperature for a few days in December. And because of that, we were growing apple in a place called Palace Orchard, closer to Indian Science. And today, what do we grow in Bangalore? We grow the waste, we litter the waste, and we have the waste people in the system. So that is where the city, the Bangalore, which was a garden city in 73, became a garbage city in 90s, and today is a dead city. So now let's try to understand how did we capture these details. So when you look at this topography of the region, the Bangalore, it is like a small hillock. Because of this, the water which flows in a three direction. You see that we have Rushabhavati, the valley, then you have KC Valley and Hebbal Nagavara Valley. And lakes were interconnected. When you look at the historical map or the data, you see the interconnectivity among the lakes. That today people talk about interconnecting or interlinking of rivers from Ganga to Kaveri. But before that, if they can interconnect lakes in Bangalore or lakes in any region, we are solving the water problem of the region. That is where the remote sensing data analysis helps. So now these are the three watershed what we have in Bangalore. So watershed is also called catchment or the basin. So okay, now we have three watershed, and let us look at the spatial pattern of the land use dynamics in Bangalore. We have used the remote sensing data from 1973 to 2019 or 20, and when you look at this pattern, you see the city the of 740 square kilometer had 68% green cover in the city because of the vegetation. Yellow is the open space, blue is the water body, red is the buildings or the paved surfaces. Now 92 you see how it has changed with industrialization, and today 2019 or 20 you see 81% of the landscape is covered with the buildings. The entire Bangalore has become red. So this is the kind of the change that has happened. The city in 1973 was known as a garden city because of the greenery, because of the vegetation, and because of the water body with a favorable climate. And today you have the unfavorable climate because we have done the mismanagement of the land resources. So now let us try to visualize this. This is the power of the GIS. GIS helps the decision maker to understand where the changes are happening, why the changes are happening. So that is where we take advantage of the visualization or geo-visualization aspect in GIS or the geoinformatics. When you look at Bangalore, when I was a child, the Bangalore was a green and 68% green cover was there, and the buildings were there only in the central business district near Majestic and surrounding area. In 92, you see with the industries coming up in Koramangala and the Pina is here. Koramangala, you see the land conversions or land use changes started happening. In 2000, you see the IT BT sector started emerging there. So that is where you see the land use changes happening in the region. Now you know the agents of change, and also you know that the behavior of the agent, how much changes have happened in which period. Then 2006, you see the intensification. 2009, further intensification has happened, and 2017, if you look at 78% is covered with the concrete area. In fact, wherever you go, you see only the concrete. Earlier we used to say water, water everywhere, but today we say everywhere concrete is there. So now when we look at that from 1973 to the 2019, there has been 1055% increase in the concrete area. We lost 88% vegetation, 79% water body. So that's where I wrote an article saying enough is enough. We need to decongest Bangalore. Some of you would have noticed the images what I showed in some of the national dailies, which talks about Bangalore becoming a dead city with this kind of unplanned urbanization. Now let us try to visualize what is likely to happen in 2020 and 2025. This is the work done by Dr. Bharat, who is currently the IIT faculty, and also Dr. Vinay, who is a postdoctoral fellow at IIT Kharagpur. So we divided the Bangalore city into the four zones, the 1 kilometer concentric circle. In each circle, we try to understand the changes that is happening and the behavior of the agent. So now 1973, if you see the most part of the Bangalore was below the 20% urbanized, only the core area is 40 to 60%. 92, you see with the Pini and Koramangala coming up, you know the extent, the spatial extent and the behavior of the agent with the industries coming up. Then 99, you see at the outskirts, the growth is happening because of the ITPT sector coming up there. Then 2002, 2006, you can see the intensification started happening. 2010, then you see that 2020, 94% is concretized. Now the current year analysis almost validates this data. And if this trend continues, 2025, 98.5% of the Bangalore would be concretized. You all know that we need oxygen to survive in Bangalore or in any region. Oxygen is given by the plant. If we are converting everything into concrete area, if we do not have the vegetation, then we are going to pay the price with the scarcity of oxygen. And today already we are paying the price. Some of my colleagues who stay outside the IISc campus, they use oxygen cylinder in the late evening. So that is the cost people have to pay for the poor planning in the city by the poor decision making or the poor decision makers or the corrupt decision makers in the system. That is where we need to tell the administration enough is enough. Let us decongest Bangalore. So we are empowered to make this comment. That is because of the remote sensing data that has given us a pattern, that has given the changes that has happened in the system over a period of time. Now let us try to see what about other cities. So in fact, in India, all cities behave in a similar fashion because babus in all the cities are the same. There is not much difference between them. They have similar colonial mindset. Hardly they work. When they work, only they pocket the resources, not for the people. So now these are the 10 cities we have done the studies. So a couple of students have done the doctoral work on that. So now this gives the patterns of change from 1977 to 2010, the Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai. You see the similar kind of urbanization is happening and urban sprawl is happening at the outskirts. So then Coimbatore, Pune, Chennai, Hyderabad and Ahmedabad. When the flooding happened in Chennai or Hyderabad, people approached us for the solution. See, had the administration used this data in the effective planning of the region, probably they could have managed the resources, they could have avoided the flooding in the region. Now, this is the kind of the statistics you can generate using, or you can analyze the variance, you can find out the patterns of the variability, and you can also write the paper. So now, let us try to understand what are the implications of these changes, the consequences of unplanned urbanization. Another 10 minutes, I will highlight some of the things. So, of course, the pollution is increasing in the city, the traffic bottleneck. When we go out, we tend to spend 2 hours or 3 hours sometimes. When I go to the outskirts, whether I go to Professor Dayasagar's institute or Dr. Jaya's institute at the outskirts, when I have to come back to the city, to my institute, I have to spend 2 or 2.5 hours in the, and there is a loss of ecosystem, the disaster, the flooding, and other associated vector-borne diseases are there, like chikungunya, dengue, etc. and also changes in climate is happening. Because of that, the variability in the rainfall has changed. The rain which used to spread across the period 40 to 45 days, today sometimes it pours in a 2 or 3 days. You have an intense rainfall creating the flooding. That is the additional factor that contributes to the flooding. Now let us see how many trees are there in Bangalore. Using remote sensing data, you can do that. For that, first you need to collect the training data. That is what we did using the GPS. We mapped the trees in couple of wards in the Bangalore, like Rajaji Nagar, Maleshwaram, and the Batangudi, etc., and some wards at the outskirts. This gives the my campus, IISc campus. We are 400 acre, equivalent to any ward, and my student mapped the trees using GPS, and also he could identify the trees. He could also give me the data what species are there. We link that with the remote sensing data. This training data we used it train the remote sensing data of a higher spatial resolution with a spectral resolution, so which helped in mapping the trees in Bangalore. Now when we did that mapping, we found that there is 14 lakh 78,000 trees are there for a population of 95 lakhs. That means for every 7% there is one tree is there. So now we overlaid the boundaries of the ward. That is what you can do using GIS. So the ward also has the population details. So you can, if you go to KGIS portal developed by Karnataka government through the Karnataka State Remote Sensing Application Center, you can visualize the ward level, the population density, etc. When you overlay that ward boundary and take the ratio of the number of trees what we have computed with the population in the thing, you will find out the trees per person. That's what we have done for at the ward level, which shows that 7% one tree is there. So you might ask me how many trees we require. You are all listening to me attentively. You are all breathing. You are taking oxygen. So when you breathe out, you give out a carbon dioxide to an extent of 540 to 980 grams per person per day. 980 grams younger people, 540 grams the people of my age group. So 1 hectare of tree takes away about 6 to 8 tons of carbon every year. By that ratio, for every person there should be 7 or 8 trees. But what we have in Bangalore is 7% one tree. So this is what we need to understand, the implication of the removal of the trees in the name of development. See, GDP is fine, but GDP at the cost of natural resources will not help the country. The country become unhealthy population. That's what we need to understand. And of course, we are also making the recommendation to the government that we need to move to the different kind of economic metric, that is GEP, gross ecosystem product, in addition to the GDP. The blindly following the economic model of GDP will not help the country. What we require is the GEP. So now, so this is the, to summarize what I said so far, 7% one tree. The what we are required to have is every person 78 trees. Okay. Now let's look at the lakes in the city. I've been working on the lakes in Bangalore for the last 2 decades. So we had 1,452 water bodies in this region when Kempegowda was there. But today, in the era of other Gowdas in the city, we have 193 water bodies. This is the kind of transformation happened in the Bangalore landscape. We lost the water body from 1,452 to 193 in a 2 centuries time period. So when we had this water body of 1,452, it could store 35 TMC of water in a region where the rain brings in about 15 TMC of water. That means even the flooding issues in the city or the region it could address, in addition to the meeting the water requirement for the irrigation as well as for the domestic purposes. Now when you look at any lake in the city, most of them are polluted and abused. The rainwater harvesting hardly happens in the city, and there is no the wastewater treatment or a minimal wastewater treatment that is happening in the city. So now we try to understand this the changes. That is where the field data collection along with the remote sensing data helped in coming out with a blueprint for rejuvenation of lakes in Bangalore. When you look at the lakes in the city area, see over a period of last the 4 or 5 decades, there has been a 79% loss of the water bodies in the city. The red are the one where we have lost the water bodies. Now only the wherever you see the lake, the people have they have forgotten the importance of the lake or the ecological function of the lake. So lake is being used for dumping the solid waste, etc. So now that is what is happening in the city. If you come to Belandur Lake, you see the solid waste is being dumped in the lake. The city sewage is the pumped to the Belandur and Vartur lake, and people are encroaching the Belandur and Vartur and many lakes in the city. And people who are away, they are sending the liquid effluent from the industries and domestic the apartment through the tankers. That means whether you are the closer to the lake or away, people in the Bangalore are polluting and abusing the water body. When we pollute the water body which looks like this in 90s, mid 90s, today it looks like this, covered with the green, the plants. These are the weeds or the exotic species. When they cover the lake, the sunlight penetration doesn't happen. In the absence of sunlight, lake will not function. That's how we do not get the fish, etc., in the water body. So that's what we saw in the lake. See, you see any ecosystem, you have the producer in the form of algae, which is eaten by zooplankton, that is eaten by small fish and large fish. Now, when we pollute the water body, because there is no sunlight penetration, you do not have the algae. Since there is no algae, you will see the zooplankton doesn't survive. Because of that, the fish population comes down. We did a study to find out if the lake is in good condition versus lake is polluted, what is the kind of benefit people have. When the lake is unpolluted, people get the goods to the worth of 10,500 rupees per day per hectare in the form of fish fodder and the water for the agriculture, etc. When we pollute the water body, the worth comes down to 20 rupees per day per hectare. That means when we pollute the water body, that means people like us who pollute the water body, the people who are dependent on this water body are the ones get affected. The fishermen, washerwomen, then the farmers are affected because of the pollution. That's where the worth of the goods that in the ecosystem come down to 20 rupees per day per hectare. Otherwise, you would have given 10,500 rupees per hectare per day, which shows that the water bodies or the ecosystem are one of the most productive ecosystems in the globe. Now, let us see how the waste is being mismanaged in the city. This is not the waste that you dump it in your neighbor's compound. These are the waste that is dumped in the city roads, in the vacant places. There are about 200 locations that the waste is being different. Using the GIS, we did the mapping, this the ground truth is, and ground data collection as well as the remote sensing data. See, when you use the remote sensing data, you can find out where the wastes are there. But to understand the composition of the waste, one need to go to the field and find out what is the composition, who are dumped, whether it's a construction or demolition waste or the organic fraction. Now you see the fate of the Bangalore. You would have seen this news, the frothing happening in the city. For some people, these are the glories. This gives they claim that it's a glacier, but unfortunately, it also portrays the poor health of the city. And also, I have traveled many parts of the globe. Nowhere people have shown me the coexistence of fire and water except Bangaloreans, where I see that Bangalore, Belandur, and Vartur Lake are in flames. For last the couple of years, we have noticed that when the people were agitated, they may approach the Lokaयुcta and the National Green Tribunal. That is where I got into this one. They requested me to do the detailed analysis. That's how we gave the based on our spatial analysis and the field-based measurement, we gave a report to the government what needs to be done. Based on that, the rejuvenation is happening in Belandur and Vastur Lake now. Now, what kind of solution the bureaucracy would have done? See, for me, the solution of frothing and this one, we need to address the pollution that is entering the city. But for the 21st century engineers who are there in the city managing the administration, the kind of solution they provide is to cover up. They just put the barricade. They thought that the froth coming to the road is a nuisance. To stop the froth entering the road, they just put the barricade. When they put the barricade, of course, I wrote the article in the media saying that this is a foolish ad hoc decision. At the time, the bureaucracy were upset. They said that they have solved the problem, but the nature has its own way of telling the bureaucrats what they have done is the inappropriate, the ad hoc decision. So after 4 days, the frost crossed over to tell that this kind of ad hoc measures won't work in a place like Bangalore, which is supposed to be knowledge capital and science capital of India. Now, these are some of the things which you would have noticed, the traffic jam or you see the green plant that grows in the lake goes as a fodder to the animal. We all take milk, so that milk also has a contamination. So these are some of the mismanagement, the glimpses of mismanagement of natural resources in the region. Now let us see what are the implications of the pollutant getting into the water body. Every unit of pollutant getting into the water body, it gets accumulated in the fish million times because the fish will eat millions of algae. That's how the bioaccumulation happens. We collected fish sample. We collected the vegetables that are grown in the downstream, the vegetables like green leaves, like pudina, the spinach, etc. And also the milk sample, the fish sample, and the fodder that grows in the water body, we collected that sample. Our sample shows that sample analysis shows that all these have heavy metals in the form of cadmium, chromium, etc., which introduces the unhealthy situation in the Bangalore. Increasing cancer instances in the city or increasing instances of kidney failure is a clear warning to the Bangalorean that we are not managing the natural resources and we are abusing our water and land resources. So now when you look at the kidney failure in the city, as per the data I have, what was about 10 years back, what is 1 in 1 lakh, the kidney failure. That means in 1 lakh population, one person would have lost a kidney. But today, that ratio has come down to 5,000 to 1. That means every 5,000 person population, there's one kidney failure. I have come across youngsters, a LKG, the girl child, having both the kidney failed in a rural school in the outskirts of Bangalore. In the same school, who collaborate with me, the KK High School, I see the age standard. There is a girl child who has lost one kidney. When I look at their family background, the parents are either clerks or the coolies. They are unable to even to meet the dialysis cost. So these are the costs we are paying for polluting the water resources without planning the city or without using the data effectively or optimally. So now this is the situation we have reached. We have lost there is a declining oxygen in the city. The water scarcity is there in the city. The kidney failure is quite often is happening in the people. Cancer instances have gone up, and also so is the respiratory diseases. When COVID instances happen in the city, you also notice the cities which are polluted had higher number of COVID, the cases and also the mortality due to the COVID. Whether it is a Delhi or a Mumbai or a Chennai or a Bangalore, you see that there is a direct positive correlation between the pollutant in the air and the water to the COVID instances in the region. Now, let us try to understand further how we are also contributing to the global warming. Say we lost the ecosystem. Ecosystem would have sequestered the carbon. Now there are increased level of pollutant in the system. Today we want to go to our offices and the institution in our own car. We give an excuse of the COVID. So that's where we are further aggravating the pollutant in the air. And in the process, we are warming the earth, and the consequence of the warming is the changes in climate. That is what we also study, how this is affecting the people in Western Ghats as well as in Bangalore. So when we did the greenhouse gas footprint in major cities in India, so you see that the cities like Hyderabad and Bangalore, which have a poor public transport, they have the higher proportion of the emission from the transportation sector. For example, Bangalore, 43% of the emission come from the transportation sector, while the Hyderabad, it is 54%. These two cities are competing with each other for software, etc., and also the mismanagement of the natural resources. And if you look at the waste, you see that 78% emission comes from the waste. For the first time in the country and in the globe, we did the quantification of the emission because of the waste mismanagement in our system. So now let us look at the kind of the architectures our architects adopt in the Bangalore. See, these are the architecture which are supposed to be for the European climate, wherein it is a cold climate or the temperate climate. So there's a cold climate where you need to conserve the heat. People use this kind of glass facade building. But unfortunately, in Bangalore, the people have the copied and pasted this architecture. That also shows how effectively copy paste culture, which Bill Gates has taught us through his product, how we people have learned and we are mismanaging the natural resources. Now, when we look at the amount of electricity consumption in this building versus the normal building, we did the spatial analysis, we did the survey of the household to find out how much electricity being consumed. We found that in the normal building, its electricity consumption is 750 to 1,700 units per person per year, 1,700 kilowatt per person per year, whereas in the glass facade building it comes to 14,000 to 15,000 units per person per year. That means almost 10 times higher electricity consumption. Higher the electricity consumption means higher is the emission. So higher the emission means we are contributing to the warming of the globe through the higher greenhouse gas footprint. Okay. Now, of course, our the research is always reported in the media for the last 2.5 decades. If you go through the media reports and through the various other platforms, you would have seen our research outcome in addition to the publication in the journals. Okay, now let's look at the flooding in the city. It's mainly because of encroachment of flow of floodplain, loss of interconnectivity, lack of understanding of floodplain's role in mitigating flood. Because most of the decision makers do not know why the buffer zone is required for the lake or a river, and of course, senseless concretization. Now, you know the lakes are interconnected. When you remove the interconnectivity, naturally this is the region gets affected and become prone to the flooding. That is what happens in places like HSPR layout, Panashankari, etc. Now, another serious thing is, lakes are connected through the drain from one lake to the other. That is supposed to be a conserved region or protected region. But if the drain, the Rajakalva, if it is 45 meters, today if you go and measure, it is 20 meters. In the name of remodeling the drain, our the city planners or the city decision makers have pocketed the money by narrowing the drain. In the process, they would have helped some builders in the region. And you see that the region is supposed to be a conserved region, a protected region. So concretization is happening. If you go between Balandur to Vartur, the region is supposed to be conserved or protected with no concretization. You see the entire region is concretized. So that shows without remote sensing how the decision maker has have taken advantage and pilfered the natural resources in the region. Now let's try to understand the buffer zone. See, for any lake or a river, there is a buffer zone. Buffer zone is the floodplain covered with the greenery. When it rains, because of the greenery, there is a percolation of water. When it percolates, it fills this zone, which is a saturated zone. Then it fills this zone, which is a vado zone. After saturation of this, the water flows in this region. So that means during monsoon you have rain, because of that you have water for 4 months. After monsoon, the water in this region moves laterally to the lake or a river. That is how you have the water for the next 4 months. During summer, the water that is in this region moves to the lake or a river or your well. Because of that, you have a water during the summer for 4 months. That means 12 months water is available, provided we have done the recharge in the underlying layer. But when you concretize the region, there is no scope for recharging. So that is how we are losing the groundwater table in the city. 45% of the city population depends on the groundwater. Even the Kaveri, we do not have much water. With the scarcity of water, the Bangalore is going to pay the heavy price. So now you see the floodplains are being encroached. So this is the floodplain which has to be protected. You see people are encroaching. Concretization, if you see, earlier there is a percolation of water. Because of that, overland flow was much lower compared to the this. But today, because of concretization, in short duration, you have the high amount of water. Those who are interested in knowing the other causal factors can go through the report what we have prepared called the frequent flooding in Bangalore causes and remedial measures. So now these are the pictures you would have seen in the city. From 2001 it has been happening. It's also because of the inaction by the administration. Okay. Now to summarize what I said so far, the lakes were interconnected, but and this interconnectivity was allowing the water to move from one region to the other, and treatment used to happen. Today, using remote sensing data, if you try to see the interconnectivity, you see that wherever you see the breaks in the interconnectivity, there's an influential fellows are sitting on that. It could be the film hero or it could be the politician. Such influential section society are blocking the natural path of the water. So now you understood changes in local climate and the impact on that. I would say city, which was a garden city, has become a garbage city. Today is a dead city because of the lack of governance and also lack of participation by the citizens in the city. Now let us try to understand further. Lakes have become seasonal, groundwater table has declined, changes in local temperature. Now let us try to understand how the lake helps in groundwater recharge. See, when the lake was there, people were having the water at 80 to 100 feet. This is in Nakshatihalli. When the lake was converted into the commercial building, the building, you see the groundwater table going down to 600 feet in that region in 4 years. And today, that is you see that the people have gone down to the 1900 feet. There is no water in that same region. So that is the implication of concretization, which deprives the percolation of the water because of the groundwater. The scarcity happens in the region. Now let us try to understand how the temperature has changed in the region using the thermal data. This is the work done by the Dr. Uttam Kumar. So currently is a faculty at IISc. So this is from 92 to 2000 to 2007. What was 19 degree become 26 degree or 31 degree, and today is about 37 degree. To understand that, from the city center we moved in the 8 direction. Wherever vegetation or water bodies are there, temperature is 2 degree lower. So you can see that whether it is also lake or the park, Kapan Park or Lal Bagh or even IISc campus, because of the good vegetation cover, you see the temperature is 2 degree lower. Because of that, we do a good science. Because of good science, we are one among the top institution in the country. We are on the top actually, next to the IIT Madras in the recent ranking. So now you understood the implication, and I would say this all shows that we are doing very badly. I would say this is we are doing very badly because people do not know the about the environment. Poor environmental literacy in the region. When we did the study to find out the environmental literacy in the Bangalore city, we found that environmental literacy in Bangalore, though the general literacy is high to an order of about the 85% compared to next to the Mumbai. Mumbai has a literacy level of 87.8%. So most of the people can read and write in the city, and they can also use or abuse the mobile. Whereas when you look at the environmental literacy, only 3.5% of Bangaloreans are environmentally illiterate. Because of that 3.5% of the environmentally illiterate people in Bangalore, today we have the vegetation cover, a tree cover of the less than 4%, which is directly proportional to the environmental literacy in the region. Now, what are the solutions? Let us try to understand. One is we understood there are the problem of declining oxygen level, groundwater table, and absence of sensible humans. How we are trying to mitigate this or minimize this? One is wastewater treatment, the sustaining the water through the rainwater harvesting and decentralized system of water harvesting. Then how we can have the mini forest in the city. We have been talking about that. I will try to give some of the success stories now. Okay, wastewater treatment with constructed wetland and algal pond. This was implemented way back in 2009 at a place called Chekkur. So this we have monitored for the last the 10 years. My students have monitored this every month, every year. So for the 10 years, we have published this report, which is available on the web in our IISc portal, Integrated Wetland Ecosystem to treat your thing. Now, when you see that they have a secondary treatment plan, when you are talking about wastewater treatment, there are 3 stages of treatment: primary treatment, secondary treatment, and tertiary treatment. Primary treatment will remove the nutrient, will remove the large particle. Secondary treatment will remove the chemical ion, while to remove the nutrient, you have to go in for tertiary treatment. When you see the sewage that is generated in the at home, it has got chemical ions as well as the nutrients. When we deploy the secondary treatment plant, then we are not removing the nutrients. And to have the tertiary treatment is very expensive in terms of electricity and the labor. So that's why most of the treatment plant are secondary treatment plant. So what I did was I just integrated constructive wetland and algal pond in the design when I was the member of that committee. So, and we monitor for the last 10 years. And if you see the Chakkur Lake, that today receives almost the clean water. So way back in 2005, the surrounding this lake, the groundwater we had monitored along with the lake water. Groundwater had the nitrate level because the sewage was getting into the lake. As the water from the lake moved towards the groundwater, the in the lake water got oxidized to nitrate. Nitrate is a carcinogen which introduces cancer in the system. Today, surrounding this Jakkur Lake, there are about 300 the wells are there. None of the wells have the nitrate level, and that is mainly because these plants, this called phytoremediation or the bioremediation, the here algae and the plants have removed the nutrient to an extent of 85 to 90%. So there are similar model we are insisting the government to do it for the other lakes in the city. Slowly things have started changing in the city. So now rainwater harvesting, what is the scope and where we have used the data, you can see that today you have the rainfall data available every day, and also you get the remotely sensed data also, you can analyze that. The city receives about 700 to 850 millimeters of annual rainfall. See, where my institute is there, we get a higher rainfall, and this part of the city receives a low rainfall. When we quantify this rain, you get about 15 TMC of water. So when we do the rainwater harvesting, the Bangalore city requires 18 TMC of water. That is where GIS helps in making this spatial analysis. Then to do the rainwater harvesting, there are two options. One is the rooftop harvesting. When you do the rooftop harvesting, you will have additional 3 to 4 months of water. When you store water through the lake, when you rejuvenate the lake and store the water, your groundwater resources also get the refilled with the clean water. So that means this is the most effective way of the rejuvenating lake and retaining the rainwater. That is what I am pushing the government to do it. So now these many lakes are there in the city. My students, the Cincy and the Silva and Sudarshan, have monitored all these lakes over the last 4 years. So we know the health of each of the lake in the city. We have used the GIS remote sensing along with our the science background. We have tried to analyze that. Now the solution for the Bangalore, if you do the rainwater harvesting, you get 15 TMC of water. If you are generating 18 TMC of water, 18 TMC of water is being used in the city, the demand in the city. That means 18 TMC of wastewater is generated. If I treat that similar to Jakur model, I'll get 16 TMC of wastewater, treated wastewater. That means 15 plus 16 TMC. I'll have 31 TMC in a region where it's the requirement of 18 TMC. So for this to happen, I have a 5R formula. The first R is a responsible citizen. When people are responsible, they will rejuvenate the lake. They feel for the lake as they feel for their parents at home. Then that helps in retaining the water, and they'll also allow the recycle and reuse of the water. So that is where we can solve the water problem in the city. So now the option three is to create the water bodies and mini forests so that you can retain the water. Now, for example, this is the water body created in the campus way back in 2008. This stores about 10 lakh liters of water. My family stays on the campus. We consume about 500 liters a day. That means in a year we require about 1.5 lakh liters of water. What I am storing is about 10 lakh liters of water. What I am trying to emphasize is here, what you consume, if you give back to the system in this way, 10 times a day, there won't be any resource crunch in our country. That is what as an Indian we should be doing it. So when we do that, our students are quite happy with this kind of the structures in the campus, which gives the recreation, the services. Apart from that, you see have the opportunity to see this kind of animals in the region. The one side, Bangalore is dying without animals and without trees, whereas you see this otter is in the campus. These are voracious eater of fish. I do not go and feed the fish every day, but nature has provided the fish. That is what we saw when we did the biodiversity mapping in the this lake. This is algae, this is zooplankton, and these are the birds and the fish in the water body. That means you just create the ecosystem. Nature knows how to sustain that. So and this region is also known for the snakes. Recently one of my students got the skin of the snake. We asked him to measure the length of the skin. He said that it is 279 centimeters. The same species which is available in the country, the maximum length reported is 240 centimeters. Ladies and gentlemen, I come from IISc. My institute is the number one in the country. We are number one because our students do a good job. Not only students excel in the campus, even the animals in the campus also excel. That's what is evident from this snake story. So now, whenever I meet people, people also take up the eco path. So here is this gentleman. He is from Murbitre. He knew that the implication of the water scarcity in the region. When he met me in 2016, 2014 and 15, it's a very bad year in the region. There was a water scarcity. After listening to my talk, he said he has a 12 acres of land. We did the rainfall analysis, how much water is available in his area of 12 acres. We also did topography analysis, and very next day we did the analysis. Myself, my students, we did the topographic survey. We gave the proposal to him where to create the water body. Believe it or not, in 15 days he creates the water body and plant the native sapling in the surrounding area. The success is mainly because this Swamiji is young. He is in the age group of 30 to 40. Not only this one, youth has joined the hand. So when youth take active part, we have a sensible solution in the system. This year there is a water scarcity in the same region. But this particular taluk didn't face a water crisis. That is because of this water body. In addition to that, this saint has taken forward my suggestion of desilting the lakes in the as a token. He did the desilting of 2 lakes because of his intervention. 32 lakes, the people have done the rejuvenation or the desilting. So I am a firm believer science, society, culture, and spirituality should go hand in hand in our country. Then only you will see the resources sustenance. So when you see the break in this, then you will see the kind of imbalances that is happening in this city like Bangalore. Now seeing the success here, I found this gentleman who is the CEO of Alvas is responsible for that. The next year, see this is 2016, next year we make sure he creates a water body in his campus. Again here JS remote sensing data helps. So and also he took up the planting of the native species. When I visited the region in 2018, along with my students, you see the smile in our face. That's because of greenery and the water in the region. When I went there in 2019, last year, you should see that there's a plenty of water, the greenery. This gentleman, when he created the water body, he was alone. He got a partner within a 6 months of creating the water body. That is how the nature gives a reward when you do the nature-friendly initiative. So now let us see the other intervention that you can do, mini forest in each ward, okay, which helps in the groundwater table increase, local ecology, carbon sequestration, and the lowers the temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. Now if you come to my campus, you will see this climber. I was fascinated by this architecture. This is from the Western Ghats. I felt that I should have it in Bangalore, that too in my campus in IISc. This is when I was a student. I brought this pot with 14 seeds to the campus. Out of the 14, I planted 7 in 7 locations. Believe it or not, out of 7 locations, it has survived in only one location, that is next to this building where I have spent last 2 decades as the faculty in this building. So now it gives a feeling of the rainforest in front of the building. Not only that, when I was a student, we created a mini forest in front of this building in a 2 hectares area. The 46 the varieties, 46 species, 500 saplings were planted in a region dominated by forest area. Now, when you come to that region, if you get a glimpse of the rainforest, and also you will see these animals like slender lories, etc. And more importantly, if you measure the groundwater today, you will have the water at 5 to 10 feet compared to 150 feet earlier in 90. That means the vegetation have a decisive role in sustaining the water in the region, apart from bringing the temperature lower by 2 degrees, and you can get the feel of the you have the recreation services because of the various animals, including snakes in the region. So other part we are doing is sensitizing the youth. I have a network of about 40 to 50 institutions in Bangalore and Karnataka. We organize a symposium popularly known as Lake Symposium. We have been doing in once in 2 years from 98 onwards. The 2020 symposium we organized during 28th to 30th in spite of COVID. Throughout the country, people are closed down, but we conducted a symposium with our motto of conveying the message to the children and the other stakeholders in the government, etc. About 40 people came to the auditorium, and about 1,000 people also virtually attended our symposium. That's how we do the capacity building. Children do the similar simple experiment. These are 4 days event. Out of the 4 days, one day is exclusively for the children. For the children to do take part in the symposium, they do a small experiments like, here children are measuring the girth and height to find out what is the carbon stored in the tree. Similarly, the schools in the vicinity of lake, they do the catchment mapping and also the water quality assessment. Here, my postdoctoral fellow Karthik is training the kids. The children go to the field, collect the sample, they come to our lab, they do the analysis. And similarly, in rural area, the Western Ghat area, the children do the neighborhood mapping of the vegetation and what kind of resources are available. We have done that My Village Biodiversity in the Shimoga and Uttar Kannada and Chikmagalur district. So the children interact with us. So this is a orientation program conducted for the children and also the evaluation program. So you can see the orientation program wherever I have visited. I have made sure the institution also take up the planting, and this is how we do the capacity building. So now you can see the children do the experiment. When they do very well, they come to the lake symposium. Similarly, I have been also doing the capacity building for the people working in institution and industry. This is the 18th session we conducted in the September to December. So that means the capacity building at all level we are trying to do for the last 2 decades in the country. So now my students are working on the biofuel prospect to meet the fuel oil for the transportation sector. When I look at the country, you see that we have abundant solar energy. This is the work I did for the country, the solar energy mapping for the entire country with the help of the two youngsters. The we mapped the solar the potential areas. Because of that, today country has a solar program, the large scale solar intervention. And today my students are working on biofuel, algae, the microbial algae. So that when I look at the country, we have 65% of the youth, the population is youth. If I harvest youth, solar energy with the biofuel, we can make the country, the developed country, or the country with the abundant resources. That's what we have been trying. We have been working towards that. And this is the article which I talked about in 2010 we published. So those who are interested in this, you can write to me if you have any query. And these are the portals where you get the details about biodiversity, free and open source software, and also my research group. And also in other portals also you get our publication. Those who are interested in our work can click on this. Our webpage looks like this. It gives a comprehensive picture of what we do in IISc, how we do the capacity building, how we are doing the science. If you are interested in the science part, you can click on the research paper section. The theme wise, we have archived all our publication. Even there is a remote sensing and GIS is there. Okay, similarly, related to water body, you can see all our publications are archived here. So we have done a good job, mainly because of our youngsters. When youngsters, they are the pillars of science, they are the assets of the nation. When they do a good job, they keep smile on our face. Thank you very much for listening to me. And if there are any queries, I would be very happy to answer. Thank you very much for attending the sessions also.
Thank you, sir. And it's very, very interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for enlightening us.
Your lecture was very informative, and we also learned a lot from your lectures. Listening to you, I'm from Nati Karnataka.
Okay, there are a couple of comments are there. Let me read out and I will try to this answer. What is the reason of this froth formation? The froth is happening in the lake. If you look at the process, it also indicates that untreated effluent from industries and domestic is getting into the water body. When we look at the sewage or effluent, they have nutrients also in the form of N and P, apart from the material like grease from the industry, etc. So when we look at the N and P, nitrogen and phosphorus, N is taken by the plant, while the phosphorus, small fraction is taken by algae, while the major fraction get trapped in the sediment. During the pre-monsoon, because of the high wind, there is a churning of the lake happens. When the churning of the lake happens, the sediment which are at the bottom, they come up. There is an upwelling. So with that phosphorus get detached is similar to you put the detergent in the bucket of water and stir it. Exactly similar thing happens in the lakes also because of that frothing is happening. Now to address the frothing, you need to know that the causal factor is the phosphorus. How to bring down the phosphorus is because of the detergent. Detergent in say way back in 90s, the European Union and Canada also faced a similar problem. They understood that detergents has a phosphorus is responsible for frothing in water bodies. They brought restrictions on the detergents manufactured in their countries with the phosphorus, lowered the phosphorus. Similarly, in our country, about 4 years back, we came out with a technical report, scientific report, and we approached the government of Karnataka as well as the government of India through the Anant Kumar, who are the minister in the central government. So to give a positive success story of that, today in our country, Bureau of Indian Standard, based on our recommendation, has come out with a restriction on phosphorus use in the detergent. There are viable alternatives like zeolites, etc. are available. So that's what is the thing. That means if you do the good science and bring out the causal factors, the convince the system, there is a solution. Now with the restriction on the phosphorus, we hope that things will change. In the meanwhile, the Bangalore now has a distinction of having the highest number of treatment plants to treat the sewage. If you look at the KC Valley, about 500 million liters of sewage get generated in the catchment of KC Valley in a city of the 15 TNC of water. The 500 MLT comes from the KC Valley. Now today, as a member of NGT, I can say that 99% of the sewage is getting treated in the KC Valley. In fact, today morning also I visited some of the treatment plants to find out whether they really have the treatment plants are working. Most of the places is working. That means our vision of reusing the wastewater is happening in the city and in Karnataka to some extent. The credit should go to the youngsters who did this science. Okay. The next question is by an anonymous attendee. I don't know why he wants to be anonymous. Anyway, due to COVID-19, private vehicle usage will surely increase in near future. So how to manage the impact? How the young researchers can contribute to protect the environment? What are the research gap in urban studies by considering Bangalore as a study area? Now, I think the gentleman, if he has heard my talk completely, I said what is the kind of research one can do, whether it is towards the land or water or the mobility. These are all the topics which one has to still address. Though I have touched upon it, still there are gaps in the system. Now, COVID-19 also gave us some of the positive things. It shows us, it showed us we can work from home and we can be more productive while working from home. So that is what I am sure all my colleagues, including Professor Dayasagar, will agree with me that our productivity has gone up during the COVID period. Productivity in terms of publication and reaching out to the people. In fact, from the last the 6 or 7 months, almost every month I have been giving 20 to 25 talks every month. I wouldn't have done it if I had to visit those institutions and give a talk. So that way, it has been it's a blessings in disguise. But COVID has told us that we have mismanaged the ecosystem. COVID, the root cause, the virus has escaped from the wild animals. Wild animals has given the virus. That is where, see, if you recall, there was a pelican death happened in Kokrebellur in Karnataka. When we did that study in February month, I had written in my report, this death is because of the virus that is being getting into the pelican body through the fishes. Why the fishes have that virus? Because we were polluting the water bodies. So the defecation, etc., was polluting the water body. Because of that, nematode population was higher in the fish. When the pelican eat the nematode, the fish, naturally they got the nematode through that. The virus also got into the thing. So that's where wherever we have abused the nature, we are paying the price. Now the youngsters in India, I want them to be the asset to the nation. They need to be sensible and responsible. That's what should happen. For them to become sensible and responsible, I would suggest that they should understand the principles of the science or whatever the subject they have taken up. They can emerge as a leader. So that is what they have to do it. Once you are knowledgeable, you become confident. When you become confident, you can make changes happening in the system. That's what youngsters should do. That I would urge the youngsters to shun the path of wasting their time on unnecessary things and concentrate in their career building, taking up the path of science in the and engineering in the system. Then the next question, again, I think the same gentleman, while mapping number of trees in Bangalore, do you consider type of tree also? Type of trees we try to look at it. It is a more intensive work. This is the work the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board, when Vamnacharya was the chair, while he was traveling with me for one of the meetings in Gulbarga University in the train, he just asked me a casual answer. How many trees are there in Bangalore? I told him that I do not know today, but I should be able to answer in 3 or 4 months. That's how that the casual talk while traveling in the train led to that study. We took 4 months using remote sensing data and some amount of ground truthing we did it. But to find out the type of trees in the thing, one should go for the detailed inventory. So to some extent, we can map some of the trees, broadleaf trees, the small leaf, using the remote sensing. But to find out among the small leaf trees, which species are there, whether it is mango or the Michaelia champaka, you need to collect the field data. That is possible. One should do it. So then Balan says, sir, and he leaves halfway. Then there is a next, the query from Balan, probably he lost the net connectivity. So is it possible to have some sort of mechanism for observing rainwater for our tar or concrete or stone roads and pavements in Bangalore and increase the groundwater level? See, as per the town planning norm, we are supposed to have 15% open space in the region. So that is keeping in mind, we need to do the groundwater recharge. So let us not think about all this, the pairs of faces, how to create it. See, today, about 10 years back, in the stormwater drain, we had the rainwater recharge pits were there. We had come up with a good thing. But over a period of time, I see a changes happening in the bureaucracy. Today, the bureaucracy or the engineers are quite happy concretizing the stormwater drain. They think that the stormwater drain should carry only the sun. It should not recharge the groundwater. See, that is because people have not understood the science part of the normal drain or the Rajakalways or the stormwater drain. That is where we should this one. If we wake up today, and we can change the system. Still, we have plenty of time. We should be able to change that. Let us not think about how to make the road the thing. There are technologies people are talking about the thing, but they are very costly. I would say that simple measures like eating protein at home. If you do that, you will get a nutritious food. For that, you don't have to go to the medical shop and buy the protein tablet, and have to have the thing. So I would say there are low cost measures. If we manage the resources, we should be able to do that. The, in fact, the interlinking of rivers is feasible alternative or not. Interlinking of rivers is a stupid fellow's idea. It's the people who are in fool's paradise come up with a thing just to loot the resources. See, for example, if I connect the Ganga to the Kaveri, the species in Ganga, when they come to Kaveri, they become they invasive. When there are invasive population thriving in ecosystem, they will eat up all the resources, we'll pay the price. You would have connected the rivers, but there won't be a water. In the process, people would have carried the briefcases. So please do not get into such illogical designs and make our resources go waste in the drain. So let us be sensible. I have shown the success model by just the lake in a region and by the mini forest, how we can retain the water. That is what the Gandhiji talked about it, Surajya. He said, decentralized way of resource management and resource harvesting. That is what we should be doing it, not the colonial mindset like interlinking of rivers. When Britishers came to the country, they brought pipes. They killed our water bodies. Because when they put the pipe and supply the water, they could loot the resources. After independence, still that mindset of colonialism continues in our bureaucracy. So if there are good bureaucrats, rejuvenating the water body is the best option, the decentralized level, we should do that. And second thing is, we should also encourage farmers to grow millet and pulses, which requires less water. For example, pulses require for growing 1 kg 200 liters of water, whereas for the cereals like rice or the wheat, you require 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water, okay, per kg. And sugar requires 10,000 liters of water. So in a scarcity of water situation, one should go for economically viable and the environmentally friendly crops like millet and the pulses. And even in the era of changes in climate, the millet will sustain. So that means for adaptation of the climate change also, that is the best way to do that. That is where one should understand the science part of it. Okay. Then the next question is, isn't the excessive NPK leads to algal bloom? Yes, that is where one should be careful. That's where when you have a constructed wetland and algal pond, you are removing the nutrient entering the water body, you can minimize the algal bloom or the blue baby syndrome or the eutrophication of the water body. So that is where the simple intervention of the phytoremediation interlinking with the conventional treatment plan has solved the problem of the nutrient getting into the water body. We should not allow the nutrient getting into the water body. That is where you should allow only treated water getting into the water body, whether it's a river or a lake. Okay. In a river also, you would have seen riparian vegetation doing the job. Okay. Then the next question by Samir Mishra, why are urban forests important? And also please suggest whether the RCC roads in the cities which are being converted from tar roads, is this logical set? Well, that is where we need to understand. See, people can fool us. RCC road is also called white topping. That is another way of looting the public money. in the process, every MLA will get X amount of money, so that's where he or she can be happy. So that is where we should say what should be the kind of design one should have. The design, what is being adopted today, is to fill for the public money. So we should come out this one and have an appropriate design, which is also economical and the long sustaining the design. Okay, so I think there are a couple of more. This one is there. Then Balan says, okay, it's appreciation. Okay, I hope he will take the message forward. I look forward for that. I need more ambassadors. As I said, science, society, culture, and spirituality should go hand in hand. What you learn, if you can give it to the 1,000 more people, I have done my job. I look forward for that from people like Balan who have understood the thing. Then Samir Mishra says, you are suggesting mini forests, but municipal bodies and railway boards are busy cutting them. When you start questioning, no one can go against yours. See, that is what the success of Bellanur, Vartur Lake, in the form of now the NGT has said that rejuvenation has to be done. The success is because of the people's voice. The public in the region started questioning. When you question the system, naturally the people will have to take the back seat. Whether it's a steel flyover, you would have seen my article during that time and the utterances in the public thing. We could chase that illogical project away. So that's what we need to do it. What I have suggested to the government of Karnataka is to have a mini forest in each ward in the urban areas and in each village, so that we can enhance the groundwater recharge and recreation services in the system. When there is a enhanced recreation services, the elders and children go out. There will be some calmness at home. So in a way, the family life also more fruitful with that kind of recreation happening in the system. Okay, so then what is environmental carrying capacity? It is not carrying capacity, it's a carrying capacity. That means what resources are there, what can you do? That is what the thing. Say, for example, when you look at the environment, there are two kinds of things: supporting capacity and assimilative capacity. How much it can support, how much population it can support, and how much pollutant it can take, and then convert it. For example, if you look at the river, you would see somebody washing the river, the cloth in the river. You collect the water sample there. 500 meters downstream, you collect another water sample. You will be surprised to see at the point 2, there is no pollution. That means by the time water moved from point A to point C, there is a treatment that happened because of the algae, bacteria, etc. That is called remediation or bioremediation. If that is happening, that one should be below the carrying capacity of the thing. If you exceed, if you overload the system, like we did in Bangalore Lake, you saw the froth happening, that we should curtail. Okay. So now there are some more questions have come. So today says the, I think Somidip asked, in places where there is algal bloom, the froth is not noticeable, but it also has high NPK. For froth to happen, you need to have the gradient also. So when the water starts moving, you see the froth happening, the churning happens. So in the high gradient topography region, you see the froth happening. It happened in the Great Lakes of the Canada and also in some of the rivers. Even if you go to Yamuna, you see the frothing happening in Yamuna. So in the river also you would see that. Okay. So then Rajendra Prasad asks, even though rainwater harvesting being a good process to control the water scarcity in urban areas, and if most of the people start they practicing rainwater harvesting, then won't affect the groundwater level in urban areas. God has given us enough water. You can keep in your sump as well as recharge can happen. In a city, there is enough water. If you do not manage it properly, then only there's a scarcity happens. So that's what we need to understand. I have shown in Bangalore, the city where 18 TMC is the water requirement, 15 TMC can be met by the rainwater harvesting, and another 16 TMC you get by treating the wastewater. So that's how you can meet the requirement. That is where I said that we need to be responsible. When we have responsible citizens, things will work. Couple of my colleagues from Institute of Science today neither dependent on BWSSP nor the electricity board, because they have their own system of rainwater harvesting and solar energy for the electricity. So that is where things are working for the last 5-6 years for them. So then Ritika Saxena says, will lake interlinking also have similar or some of the challenges as no, the lakes were interconnected. You know how the lakes, we do not have natural lakes in Bangalore or the southern India. What our elders did was, wherever the rivers were flowing, they just put the bund. That bund, the bunded portion became a lake. That's how in the Kaveri basin or in the other, this one you see, wherever bunds were there, we had the Pinakini, all those places, we have the lake. So that way, by re-establishing the connectivity among the lakes, you are allowing the water to move within the region. See, you are not bringing from Ganga to Bangalore. You are not bringing from Russia to Bangalore. It is within the Bangalore in the same agroclimatic zone, so same kind of climatic this one. There won't be any implication. We need to do that. When water starts moving, the treatment of water happens. That is what we should be looking for. So, okay, I think there are no more questions. Thank you very much. I will give it to the Professor Dayasagar. I think he will have the concluding word. Okay.
Thank you, Professor. You have patiently answered so many questions. And some of the questions actually I thought of asking, but it's
You can ask.
audience are really good and then very interactive. And it actually reminds me when our former president, Dr. APJ Kalam, was suggesting river linking should be really taken up by the government. I remember there was an article by Dr. BP Radhakrishna in our current science. I believe you must be knowing him. He is from
Yeah,
Bangalore.
I know.
And he was strongly supporting that no, artificial recharge has to be done, not the interlinking of the river. And he also mentioned how it is not cost effective interlinking the rivers. And he has given an example of what was done in the United States, linking the rivers, how much cost it has incurred to the actually the government. All that was mentioned. So it's nice to hear that you are also advocating that artificial recharge and lake linking is a much better option than the river linking. So with all that, and I want to ask you a question, probably it is a kind of naive question. And do you have an environmental rights commission like Human Rights Commission to take
And
the issues to the court?
no, fortunately, we have something equivalent to that is in the form of a green bench in the court and National Green Tribunal. So that if someone goes for a PIL, that is referred to the green bench or National Green Tribunal depending on the jurisdiction. Okay. Now, when it goes to the, for example, National Green Tribunal, they do not have all the expertise. What they do is they'll identify the experts, they constitute a committee, and we need to study that and give the report to them. Based on that, the judgment will come. For example, in Bangalore, between Balandur and Vartur Lake, there is a wetland. Wetland is denotified and given for a SEZ. Then when the builder took it up and he encroached about 3.5 acres of the Balandur Lake, when the local people approached me, when I did the study and gave the report to the National Green Tribunal, for the first time in the history of India, the
Yes.
builder was penalized 140 crores.
Okay.
Then NGT didn't stop at that. When this man went for the appeal, the NGT constituted a committee and made me a chairman. Then all the more firm decision came out of that. So that is where if judiciary, if you have a sensible judicial member,
True.
probably things will change in our country.
True, true, Professor. And it also reminds me that there was a nice report by Royal Society of London under the presidency of Professor Robert May. And they were arguing about carbon emissions, how to minimize those carbon emissions. And then the House of Lords were arguing that the blunt truth is the economy, and that always that rift is there between the scientific community and the governments, and but bringing governments to believe in scientific community and following the scientific committee's guidelines is always a big challenge. I'm sure that your efforts and leads would really help the common people. And let us give a big applause to Dr. Professor TVR for his wonderful talk. Thank you very much, Professor. And we meet sometime. Yes.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.